What's up, friends and listeners? You're about to hear a new episode of Disrupting with Ashley Holt. That would make me Ashley Holt. Thank you for stopping by. Disrupting is about people who are quite literally allergic to the status quo in our world. They have to make a shift or a change when they see something that needs changing. So those are the conversations I'm having with my favorite social media follows, experts, maybe a celebrity or two could pop up. We're going to manifest that together. And just some of my friends that I know we're doing amazing work for the world around us. I'm so excited for you to hear these conversations. Don't forget to like and subscribe on your favorite platform so you get notifications about new episodes, and leave comments for me. I love your feedback. Let me know what questions you want to ask, who you want me to reach out to for an interview so that we can get started on disrupting the things in this world that we need to change together. Dr. Ebony Butler. Wow. One of my favorite people to talk to. Like, I don't care where I am in the world, what I'm doing, I'm always going to find an excuse to talk to you. So thank you so much for making the time. For people who don't know you, you are a psychologist. You have my therapy cards, which we will get into today because you have different iterations of them for people. But you are a mindset, food relationship strategist and therapist as well, speaker, consultant, helping the women, helping all of the girls. I also told you when I reached out to you that you hurt my feelings every day on Instagram with your hard truths. And I love that. People need that. We need accountability. We don't always give it to ourselves. So I wanted to talk to you because I feel like you are such a disruptor in your space in such a loving way. So I want to start by asking you, what made you want to shake the table? Why did you feel like your field needed a disruption?
So much for having me, Ashley. This is so funny to me, and I'm just smiling, the biggest smile. I call myself a disruptor, but it's hard to hear it back that I'm a disruptor. So I appreciate that too. I think it's a bit of my personality. And also, um, sometimes the truth is just not fluffy. Sometimes, and this is honestly what I believe. I really feel like as therapists, sometimes we're told to just kind of like, yes, everything is good. And we always got to talk in this soft voice, and everything should be just so fluffy and cute and gentle. And I do think that I try to be gentle. And I also think that there are people, especially people who look like me, we understand and get things in a particular type of way. I'm not saying that we got to be harsh with people who look like us, because that's not what we need either. And I want to be real, relatable. And my people sometimes don't hear me when I'm like talking like a white woman. So I want to talk like the Black woman that I am. And there are certain things that we get as Black women, and the people who I'm talking to get it. So that's why I feel like I got to show my real voice, and I got to have my real voice. And I think because I use my real voice, I think that that is disruptive.
Mm.
I think that that's different than what we were trained to do and what people know psychologists to be. And also, my personality is one where I'm like, well, I really think that that's true, and I'm going to say something about it. I could not say something, but that just doesn't feel authentic to me. So part of my personality is, no, I'm going to say, because it doesn't feel right. I'm willing to be wrong if I say it, but this doesn't feel right. It's a blend of those things.
Right. And do you think, so what's interesting about that is it sounds like innately your identity as a Black woman makes you a disruptor just by taking on the space that you're in. Is that how it should be though? Like, I feel like that's a loaded question, but have there been times where you're like, I don't even feel like I'm doing anything radical right now. I'm just being me. I'm just speaking the truth, and it's being received as like something that's bigger than what you feel it should be.
Absolutely.
Mm.
That's why I said I think that over time I've learned to see myself as a disruptor, but that's not really who I thought I was. I think I was just like, well, actually, and no. Like the person in the class is like, well, wait a second. I don't really think that, have we thought about it this way? Maybe if we think about it this way, or let's kind of see if we came from this different angle. So I think that it definitely should be more of our authentic voices in this space. And I think that when you don't have that, voices that don't sound the same can be seen as radical. It seems like you're kind of stepping outside of what the norm is. And I think that's okay, but I definitely think other people should join and say that. And I can get why they don't, because it is risky. There are many days when I've gone off of social media, I was like, ooh, I probably shouldn't have said it that way.
You
or
have
I
to put the
probably
phone down, put it away.
I, I probably should not have done that. But I think that is necessary because I think that the field of mental health warrants all of these sides. I don't think that there's one way to approach these things.
Yeah. What do you think is the biggest critique that you have for your field versus how it critiques itself? And do they match?
Mhm. No, I think the biggest critique that I have is that there's not enough emphasis on systemic issues. We continue to put the onus and the blame on individuals for having the issues that they have. Oh, you're depressed because you're not motivated and you're not moving and you are thinking too poorly. You need to reframe the way that you think. You need to restructure your thinking. If you only committed to changing, then things would change without taking into account that some of us are under these huge oppressive systems and we can't change. That a lot of the depression we have is because of the systems. It's because we don't have money. It's because people don't have jobs. It's because we live and grew up in poverty, and that's the trauma that continues to plague me. It's not that I don't want to do better, it's that I can't.
Mm,
And the field of mental health, when it kind of like lays out disorders and lays out treatments and interventions, doesn't take any of that into account. You can look specifically at cognitive behavior therapy. It's specifically how can you change your thoughts to change your behavior. Well, I had a client during the pandemic that said, I'm scared to go to the mailbox. CBT would have told me, let's restructure that so that you're not afraid. Ebony said, it is very scary to go to the mailbox as a Black woman. It is very scary to leave your house. So we can't just rethink and restructure our way out of these systems. I think that we have to do better at naming what it is that's causing a lot of these issues. And the field, I haven't seen where the field of mental health at large has taken responsibility for that.
mm.
It's not in the DSM. When you look at the disorders, when they're talking about all the ways to tease out disorders, it's not taking into account, oh, make sure that you account for these differences when you're looking at that. That's not in there. I haven't seen it. And so I don't think that by large that they are critiquing themselves in the same way that a lot of clinicians of color are.
Yeah. Okay, you use some acronyms in there. Not that any of us are going to be psychologists by the end
Yeah.
of this, but was it CBT, DSM? What are some of those things?
Oh,
Is it kind of
CBT is cognitive behavior therapy. It's an
okay.
intervention to help people who mostly struggle with anxiety and depression.
Mhm,
Because basically the premise is that if you think something, it's going to make you feel something. And if
mhm,
you change the way you think, you can change the way that you feel. In theory,
hmm.
that happens. So if I'm looking at something, I can shift my perspective, but that's a very privileged thing to be able to do also, right? So in some instances, that's helpful. Like, oh, we can think about what ways that that would be helpful. The DSM is the diagnostic the diagnostic manual for disorders.
Mhm.
So basically, that's like we call it the disorder Bible in psychology. That's where we go to actually figure out what the symptoms are and if they meet criteria.
Mhm.
So it's just a reference guide.
How did you find yourself in this space? Because I feel like a lot of us, and I have been and will be very transparent that like this podcast is something I'm excited to do because I'm also in a space where like disruption is happening actively, right? So I also am curious because did you always know you wanted to be a psychologist? Did you get to college and you were like, oh, this is interesting? Did it find you? Like, how did you find the space and then still decide, okay, I'm going to stay in this space, but I know that I'm going to have to change parts of it to fit me.
Yeah, it's the latter part. I
Mhm.
always knew I wanted to be a psychologist since high school.
Okay.
So the quick story is that I was taking a psychology class. You don't really take that at the high school level, but I was in a program that allowed us to take some college courses, and that was one of the courses. I walked into class one day, and my teacher at the time was like, "Hey, Dr. Burrell," which was my born last name, my maiden name, and I was like, "Doctor," and then he said, "Yes, you're going to be a doctor." I was like, "Got it, bet." Because if you tell me I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. That's just my personality, right? So I said, oh, I'm going to major in psychology when I go to college. And knowing the field and trajectory of psychology in order to make money, which I talk about very openly on my platform, is
Mhm.
that you have to have, back then, you had to have a PhD because it gives you more credibility and it gives you more opportunity and flexibility in your career. So I knew I wanted to be a psychologist since then. I just didn't know how that would take shape.
Mhm.
So then personal stuff happened where I lost weight and I became a weight loss coach. And I was like, the more identity work I did, I said, this is super oppressive. I don't want to tell another Black woman that she just needs to be skinny to be better. That doesn't align with me. And I don't believe in it. So I need to figure out how I can still do this work while also guiding and supporting what name. So I made up food relationship strategist, to be honest. Like
Okay.
I didn't know what else I could do.
I
I
respect
really want
it.
to talk about relationship, right? But I was like, but I'm not going to tell somebody they just need to lose weight. That just doesn't sit well. So that's how all of this morphed. And I said the weight loss field is oppressive. I read the book Fearing the Black Body by Sabrina Strings. And I was like, oh my God, this is super oppressive. I get it now. And then the more I worked in psychology as a therapist, I was like, I want to work with the people who bring me joy. I want to work with the populations and the issues that make me feel like I don't have to dread Monday and that I don't have to dread going to work. And that's how all of this took shape.
Right.
And I knew that my personality being what it is, once I learned something, I can't unlearn it. So once all of this stuff unfolds that, oh, depression really isn't related to just them not being able to will themselves together. These are the systemic issues. I can't stay silent to that.
Yeah.
And I think that I would be continuing to be oppressive if I did. And so I just can't be a part of that. So once I know better, I try to do better. And I
Mhm.
really try to live in alignment with what I tell people to do or what I help guide people to do.
Yeah. So I'm hearing you talk about choices that you were faced with that you had to make, or feelings that you had where you were like, okay, I need to do something about how I feel about the situation. You also said alignment more than once. How do you
Mhm.
kind of build your sense of self and knowing so that you can approach a situation or a person or whatever and say, nope, that's not aligned. Yes, that is aligned. Like, what did that process look like for you? And how long did it take? Because I feel like some people feel like you can kind of just wake up one day and it clicks.
Yeah, I've been fortunate enough. So as I've done my training, as I've kind of like going through all the process of becoming a psychologist and all that stuff, we go through some stuff where you have to do your own therapy and you have to do your own work. And I've been fortunate enough to be immersed in that while I was in school, whether life made it happen, like going through a divorce while in school and having no choice but to engage in the interventions that we were being taught and those kinds of things. I think that helped.
Mhm.
But I also think I had some really good mentors. I had some really great mentors, Black women, supervisors who were like, is this something that you want to do? How do we help you find your voice? What is this going to look like? And by having that support, I was able to find my voice. I was able to figure out who I am. I was able to do some identity work. I was able to do some emotional work around just learning who I am as an emotional person. And that has helped me. And also beyond that, therapy. So I am committed to therapy since I was going to therapy on and off. So on and off, like since my master's program, mm-mm, since postdoc, which postdoc was 2013, 2012, and then going on and off. And then I committed in 2020 that I'm going to go every 2 weeks. I don't care what happens. And
Mm,
that has been the biggest thing forever. Like I told my therapist, I don't know what you're going to do, but I'm here every 2 weeks, even if nothing is going on. Even if we talk about my coffee order, I am just here. And that has kept me accountable and it's kept me aligned. And the more I uncover and peel back about myself, the better that becomes and the better I'm able to show up with my clients, the better able I'm to show up with like online. I'm just feeling more aligned. And the more I recognize my values, the
mhm.
more grounded I feel. So it's all been a process of mentorship, therapy, and just engaging in the work and being present in the work.
Okay, so it's interesting. I want to talk about the work because,
Okay.
especially for Black people,
Yeah.
I feel like even if you can get the Black people you love into therapy, it's kind of like, oh, well, I got what I need. Okay,
Mhm.
time to move on. Thank you so much. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like a doctor's appointment where you got a physical and now you
Yeah.
can go. But the no matter what of that, like I'm here every 2 weeks, even if I have nothing to say.
Yeah.
Talk about the importance of that, like the consistency, the commitment, the discipline of that. Why was that so important to you? Why not skip a week if you feel great that day?
Mhm. First of all, I want to recognize that it's a privilege for me to even be able to pay for therapy. And
Mm,
it's also another luxury for me to be able to find a Black woman who looks like me that I match with. Right. So
okay.
I recognize these are barriers for people. So I just want to name that everybody's not going to have that experience and it takes time. For me, because life is always happening, I feel like it's so easy as a psychologist for me to talk my way out of accountability. It's so easy for me to talk my way out of doing the right thing when nobody's looking per se, kind of that thing. I think it's so easy for me to hide and go inward and say everything is okay.
Yeah.
And being in therapy every 2 weeks has allowed me the safety and comfort to build the words and the language around, you know what, everything is not okay, and to really be present when everything is. Because I'm a person who actually likes to jump from thing to thing. So I'm an ambitious person. I like to achieve. That validation has actually done something for me over my life, right? So I gravitate towards those things, and it's super easy for me to hide behind those things. So I think showing up every 2 weeks for me keeps me grounded, and it keeps me honest with myself, and it keeps me honest with the people around me. And I think that more so than any CEU or continuing education class can do, it keeps me honest with my clients. I can only go as far with them as I've gone myself. And if I'm telling them to do the hard thing and I have no compassion for how hard that actually is, that's a little unfair, I think.
Wow.
So I'm telling you not to answer the phone, but here I am answering the phone. And now I'm holding you to a standard that I'm not even holding myself to. Like, that is not fair. So I feel like I'm able to understand, and we're able to really be in community the more I do my work. Because I understand what that work is for them and how long it's going to take and how hard it is.
Yeah. What do you
Mhm.
do when you encounter someone, whether it be in therapy like a client or in life, that you realize is not actually ready to do the work? Like they think they are, but
Yeah.
you recognize that they're not. And I feel like you always see Ian Van Zant, not on my watch is always going viral. Like, how do you, because I feel like obviously it's super relevant to you and what you do, but also some people in life you encounter that
Yeah.
are really not trying to do the work, but they think they are. Like I was just talking to my friend about some guy I was talking to, like who like speaks in riddles because he thinks that it makes him sound smart. Like, do you know what I'm saying? And it's like, I don't know that you've actually done work on yourself because you're not actually talking about you. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh God. We probably know the same people. Um, but but what I will say is I think that several things come to mind. One, I recognize in my evolving that I can't force people to do anything.
Mm,
Make them do more than they want to do. So I have to let people do. That's helpful for me as a person and clinician. I have to let people show up in the ways that they can. So as a clinician, if you want to come, therapy is scary. Let's just be
mhm,
honest. There's a lot of stuff that has the potential to come up. It's scary. So if you want to come once a month, come once a month. I'm not one of those therapists that's like, but you got to be here every week. So I let people do the work on their own.
mhm,
That helps them feel more in control. As a person, though, I also recognize in my older age that I just have to sit back and let people come to terms with what they want to come to terms with. Now I get to decide how I want to show up with you. Once you kind of show me that you're not ready to do the work, I get to say, hey, that feels like that's a relationship I want to be in. That's the person I want to communicate with or not.
mhm,
Right. But I can't make them do anything. So I just have learned that over the years through broken relationships, broken friendships, falling out with people, but also clients digging their heels in therapy and not coming back.
mm,
Right. I don't want people to be afraid of therapy. So you really have to just let people show up how they want to show up, and getting over yourself as a clinician in person is that I'm doing enough if I just show up. If
mm,
we talk about how you were able to get out of bed and make coffee for yourself and have 5 minutes for yourself, I'm okay with that if that feels aligned to you. I would love for you to be able to go outside, get some sunlight, and do all the things. But if that's all you could do right now, we have to take that for what it is. And
mhm,
I'll continue to show up and support you as you need. We don't want people to get afraid of so afraid of therapy that they just was like, oh, we don't want to come anymore, because that's harmful,
right.
right? So learning to just let things be and releasing the need to control other people's journey.
Mhm. And you have talked about before, which I appreciate, the boundaries that there are to get to therapy for a lot of people, or even if you know that you should do it and you can afford it, finding a therapist that makes you feel comfortable.
Mhm.
Um, and I know that that kind of led to why you did the therapy card. So I don't know if you have any around you, but can you kind of explain like why it was important for you to make therapy cards, even though you're still seeing clients? Talk to people about like what those are and what made you want to create them.
Yeah, so in the field, a lot of people, because I have a public platform and a lot of other therapists have public platforms, think that you could just reach out to a therapist and see them. Well, we have licensing laws and you can only practice in the state that you're licensed. So a lot of people get discouraged when they find a therapist like, oh my God, I really like her personality. And then you're told no. So that's one issue and one barrier. The other issue is that therapy is expensive. And
Mhm,
in order for us to make a living and to cover bills and all that stuff, we have to charge rates that really are outside of what people know or understand that is commensurate with the value, or what they can actually pay. So that's another issue. But also, people really have issue with going to therapy because of what they've been told therapy means about them as a person. So you have that other issue because people label crazy or something's wrong with you, you're weak. So this keeps people out of therapy. So in 2019, I started my private practice honestly I just wanted to make money to travel, and I didn't want that travel money to come out of my full-time job, honestly. I just did not. And so it was part-time and it filled up quickly. So I was still working for a government agency at that time. And I said, I can't see everybody, but how could I talk to people and have people feel like they're talking to me without actually talking to me? If they're in New York and I'm in Texas, how can they feel like they're talking to me?
Mm-hmm.
If they can't pay what I'm asking them to pay, how can they still talk to me?
Mm-hmm.
So I took the questions that I asked and put them in a therapy card deck. That's literally how that happened. And that the first deck was the women's deck, actually. It was this one. And so from the women's deck came the teen, came the men, and then the last iteration is for relationships. So I literally just want people to feel like they have something at their fingertips that would allow them to do some meaningful work and allow the process of therapy to be less sort of like aversive or feel less threatening,
Right.
because you have questions that a therapist could ask. So even if you decide to go to therapy, you understand, oh, they may ask me something like this. That's not as
Right.
bad as I thought it was. That's
Right.
not going to hit me as hard as I thought it was. Like, we're not asking like, so tell me about putting you under hypnosis and things like that. They're literally asking, what happens for you when you get angry?
Mm.
And giving people that insight, I think, helps make the process a lot less threatening.
Right. What kind of feedback have you gotten from people who use the cards?
So I've gotten really good feedback. I'm very fortunate. I am very fortunate. I'm very blessed. I released these cars in 2020, and to date, we've sold over 11,000 units. And that's literally just me being on social media. My goal with these in the first year, I just want to make $5,000, get these into 100 people's hands. That's all I wanted to do. And it has surpassed that
Wow.
beyond what I ever could imagine. And the reception has been that these are good. They are hard enough that they make you stop and think, but they're easy enough that they actually could work for just an everyday person, or therapists can use them too. So the feedback has been really, really good. And I don't get, so, if you have a product, you're going to get some bad reviews, but to be really honest, I don't get really many bad reviews. And that's a blessing. Most people have said that they're really helpful and they found them helpful.
What was it like to go from I have this idea to actually I'm going to execute this idea? Because I feel like a lot of times we hear the success story like at the end of it when something was awesome, but it's like I feel like that's really tough to have an idea and be like, no, I'm actually going to do what it takes to make it happen.
It's the scariest thing ever, because when I got this idea, I lied to you not. I was like, this is it. I've done all kinds of things, right? Personally, I was like, this is it. Professionally, I was like, this is it. It's just something went off and I was like, oh my God. It's like you get something deposited in your spirit and you're like, wow,
Mm.
that is what you want me to do. That is what I have to do. Okay, I got it. And it's the scariest thing because I got the idea in early 2019. And then when we were ready to release them, the pandemic happened.
Mm.
And I was working with a coach at that time who I still work with now. And I was like, I'm going to pull back. I'm going to wait until the pandemic is over. And I'll release these because people don't have money. And I want to be cognizant and aware. And I want to be sensitive to the fact that people are struggling right now. She said, nope, you're going to put it out anyway. And I was like, you want me to do? I was so nervous and scared.
Mhm.
The day that I actually launched them was May 20th, on my birthday of 2020. I was shaking. I was nervous. I cried because this is something that I knew. It's like a baby. It's like I'm
Yeah.
showing you the baby and you have the chance to tell me we don't like your baby at all,
Yeah.
or we love your baby. And that is so risky and it is so vulnerable, but it's been the most rewarding process, but it's scary every single time. Every time I have to create a post and at the end have a call to action to go buy these cards, this is so scary. This is so scary every time, and we're going on the 4th year.
Mhm.
So the whole process has been one of getting out of my own way, one of faith, one of trusting myself, because I'm not a salesperson
Right.
at all. I was the kid in school that was like, I can't even sell the chocolate. Just give me $20 and we'll just turn it in. Y'all can have this, right? But to come on and put myself out there, it's a constant putting yourself out there,
Yeah.
constant confrontation with vulnerability. And it's been super scary but rewarding. Mhm.
Wait, okay, wait. Confrontation with
Mhm.
vulnerability. Oh my, what is that? Hold on.
But because it's so easy to say, I'm not going to do it. And then
Yeah.
vulnerability is staring you right in the face, and you can either lean into it or you can avoid it. And every time I choose to create a new deck, show up for a speaking engagement, ask somebody to buy this thing, I'm confronting the vulnerability that I really want to run from. And I choose to lean into it every time because I know that that's what I need to do as a person,
Mm.
but also that's what I need to do for a business. And nobody's going to sell them unless I, like me, So it really is me confronting that thing every single time.
Wow.
It's exhausting. I'm not gonna lie. It's
And that's the
exhausting.
thing. And I thought that we were better about this, but I think people really do. Like they would see your social media and be like, "Oh, she is having a blast. This is easy for her. She's," you know what I'm saying? And
Yeah,
you're like it every single time.
every
Like
single
it's a
time.
muscle almost.
Oh my God. Every single time I go live, every single time I show up, I can do stories better, but going live, showing these products, intentionally creating posts and ads, it's a battle with vulnerability every single time.
Wow.
And I'm just choosing to do it anyway because I know that that's what my highest self would be so proud. So I'm just so it's I go back to alignment. I know what I have to do, and nobody's
Mhm.
going to do it if
Mhm.
I don't do it. So I have to, and that just keeps pushing me. But you know what? That's been who I've been my whole life.
Mhm.
When it's scared anyway, my sister told you I'm super scary. I don't watch scary movies. I'm always thinking somebody's trying to get me.
That's hilarious.
But I do the scary thing anyway.
Right.
And that's one of the things that I love about myself so much is that even if I'm scared, I'm gonna show up and do it. And that's been amazing. Yeah.
On your social media, you challenge all of us to do the work. I saved some of your favorite posts to read to you to rapid fire. And I'm going to be honest, some of them attacked me personally. So nobody has to be more offended than me. Like, we're just going to go straight vulnerable right now because I'm obsessed with this. Only because you hear people all the time say that, the negative things about social media. And a lot of them are true. Like, I'm not a social media defender by any means. But I feel like accounts like yours kind of help to balance what's going on there, even if you're stuck in the toxicity. Okay, so let me go. I have them as truth bombs in my notes, just so you know. We're going to be transparent here today. Okay,
Oh, it
so
is.
one of the ones, we'll start moderate. You have stopped trying to prove yourself to people. What does that even look like? And then how do people stop doing it? Obviously, the short version, because we're not giving you insurance
Mhm.
cards today. So the
Yeah,
short version.
that's for me. So a lot
Okay.
of the book that I write is for me. One of my first divorce, I had an aunt of my ex tell me, stop trying to prove yourself to people who are committed to hearing the fallacy about you or who've already made it up in their mind that they're not going to believe you anyway. So that's my reminder to me and to other people. Stop trying to prove yourself. People have already made it up in their minds what they're going to believe. But I think we spend so much time on social media trying to convince people that we are who we are,
Right.
arguing with people. See this, get validation from people. Stop. People have already made it up in their minds. And the people who want to see you will see you. And we don't have to keep convincing strangers for it. But we don't.
Yeah. And I have experience. I know other people have experience. You can try and try and try, and it's not going to change anybody's minds anyway. You might as well save your time.
So you know how many times we argue with people under those comments and they are still committed to seeing things the way they see them? It
Honey.
doesn't work. You can't persuade people. They've already made it up in their mind. So stop doing that for yourself. Partners, family, coworkers, anybody. Stop trying to prove yourself and live for you. Honestly, that's really
Yeah.
what.
I responded to a troll once. There were tons of positive comments, and I responded to the one troll. And this man said, "Oh my goodness, I'm just so happy you responded. I don't even know what I was talking about." I'm like, see, that's how you know. That was a test. I failed it. I failed it. That's
My
okay.
God. Oh my
Okay.
God.
You said, oh, this one is for me. This one is for me. You said, do you really like them? Or are you trying to get them to like you to avoid rejection? My God, today. Do you think that we do that more often than we realize?
Yes. Especially since I'm newly dating Ashley, I am learning so much about myself and other people. And I'm able to meet my clients where they are when they tell me the stories of their dating experiences too. And what I'm finding is the common thread is that none of us want to be rejected.
Mm,
We will say things like, maybe I can learn to be okay with that. Or I'm gonna try to give it a shot. I mean, it's not really what I like, but I'm gonna just do it anyway. And when the curtains fall, you're like, I didn't really like them anyway.
correct.
We just didn't want to be left. Some of our abandonment stuff comes up. Our rejection sensitivity is there. And we just don't want anybody to not choose us.
Mm,
And that's just the humanness of it all. And when we realize that we're doing that, we can actually take care of ourselves and our own rejection sensitivity. Do what
right.
we need to do to heal that and stop like wasting other people's time and ours.
Because the worst part is when you didn't like them in the first place and then they still hurt your feelings. And you're
And
like,
they still hurt your feelings. You're like, wait, I
wait,
would never.
this is not how this goes.
No,
Wait.
I made some concessions and this is how it turned out. Okay.
My goodness. Wow. Okay, that one I clutched my pearls on that one physically. Okay. I'll do two more. One of them is not dealing with any foolishness this year.
Okay.
How
Not
do
doing.
you even, because I feel like we don't want to deal with foolishness, but we make room for it and we know it's headed our direction at this big age at this point. So how do you try to reject foolishness?
The whole premise behind that post was I want to be more intentional and I am not going to allow anything in my space that makes me feel like I don't recognize myself
Mhm.
or that I'm in community with folks who don't value me or that I'm finding myself arguing with people who I don't know.
Hmm.
I'm just not dealing with it, but that requires that I am more intentional. I
Right.
am more intentional. And the more intentional I am, the more I get to say, this belongs here, this doesn't belong here. And the more I can show up and say, you know what, this has gone on too long. Because we will fall victim to kind of like dealing with some stuff, but we may be able to catch it earlier.
Mhm.
And I'm not doing that. Like, I'm not doing a lot of the things that led me to be processing in 6 therapy sessions, the things that I've been processing. I
Mm,
am exhausted. And I don't want anything else to do with that, is what I meant.
mhm. Correct. Okay, this last one is to forgive yourself. And you went on to say that we spend so much time forgiving other people, but not really ourselves. Where does that come from?
So actually, I have that card in each of my therapy cards.
Please.
Yeah. So I have it. So that card is what. How do you forgive yourself? No, 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 no. What do you need to forgive yourself for? Is this one? Forgive
Mhm.
yourself for. Because growing up in Mississippi, growing up Baptist, Christian, a lot of the things that we're taught is to always be other facing, making sure that other people are okay, being a servant for other people, and we carry so much guilt, punishment, and critique of ourselves. I've heard people time and time again give so many other people grace, let other people kind of like work their way back up to grace or into their kind of like space, but we will beat ourselves up day in and day out for things that we should have forgiven ourselves for a long time ago. So the purpose of this card and that post was to really have people stop and think about what are the ways that I'm continuing to criticize myself that and how many times am I going to pay for that same thing
Mhm.
into how do I let myself off the hook and move forward? How do I stop carrying so much guilt and shame about something that I shouldn't feel guilty or shameful about? So it was really how do you pay attention to yourself when you've been taught how to pay attention to other people for so long?
Mm, mm, mm. Wow. Well, I want to I'm gonna get off your Instagram now. People can go follow you if they want to be read like I'm read. It just keeps me humble. Everybody needs that moment every single day. But I do wonder what is your advice for someone who has that? Like I've heard Michelle Obama talk about how we have that fire inside of us to change things, to disrupt. What is your advice to someone who feels that fire? They know it's there because you can't ignore it. We've all tried, but they don't know what the first step is, or they're scared, or they felt what you said you were feeling, but you had to still do it anyway. What is something that you would tell someone who feels that way?
I'm I'm not even gonna try to sound philosophical right now. I'm just gonna tell you what I did and what I think
Mhm.
is helpful. Get a community of people who support you,
Yeah.
who you can turn to and ask questions about how you showed up. So my community, I'll write something and I'll immediately, well, back in the day, I used to have a live, I would go live.
Mhm.
I would call my sister and say, how did that sound? How did that sound? So you have to one, show up, two, get a community of people who you can bounce things off of, who will hold you and tell you, yeah, that was a little harsh. So
Mm,
you get feedback. Okay, so I want to say this, but I need to say it different next time. I think that has been the game changer for me and finding where you feel comfortable. I can't show up like that on LinkedIn because I'm not comfortable on LinkedIn.
Mhm.
I'm comfortable on Instagram. I can't show up like that on TikTok yet either because I'm not comfortable on TikTok. So you have to find where you're comfortable. If you're comfortable writing, start there.
Mhm.
Put it in a blog, put it in a newsletter, put it in a book. If you're comfortable on a podcast, start there. But we all have to find the space that's going to allow us to be our full selves. And I feel like I can be my full self on
Yeah.
social media, particularly that space. So, and then the community gives me feedback. They'll tell me, you know what, we like you, but we disagree. We're gonna have to disagree on this one. I was like, okay, I hear you. I'm still,
Like when you was talking about the first dates, you thought the girl
oh,
was
yeah,
ridiculous about Applebee's,
yeah,
and
yeah.
you stood 10 toes. You were like, "No, I'm sorry,
I
y'all
still
are."
think y'all ridiculous, right? I can see where you're coming from, sis, but I think you're ridiculous right now, right? And I get it, all of that, right? But I believe what I believe, and I think that over time, by putting myself out there, trial and error, and just seeing, I was able to gain a comfortability around showing up as my full self. So I want people to know that if you have that fire, it's going to take some time for you to become comfortable. Drop it out little bit at a time. Go to your community for support, but keep doing it. Keep doing it. And challenge the thoughts around shame too. That's my biggest thing. Is like, oh my God, I'm so embarrassed that I said that. And
Mhm.
then I get feedback from people like you. It's like, oh my God, we like that.
You're
So
right.
if you keep showing up, you'll hear the messaging. And
Right.
it'll either validate that things are well, that you can keep going in that direction, or you'll get feedback that you need to change. And I'm the type of person that if you tell me it was harsh, or if you tell me you didn't like it, I'm going to evaluate it. I'm not going to like it,
Mhm.
but I'm going to evaluate it, and that's going to shift how I show up.
Right.
So just be willing and open to change, but doing it anyway.
Dr. Ebony, this was, I never had any doubt, but I love that you were willing to do this with me. You trusted me, you continue to trust me, and I'm just so grateful for you. So thank you for doing this.
You're welcome. I'm grateful for you. I love talking to you. I just really love talking to
We
you.
could have
So
went another, I mean, this could have been
I
twice as long. You know what
know.
I'm saying? So people need to be
Oh,
grateful. But yes, thank you.
thank you, Ashley. I appreciate you.
Yes.